So I actually talked myself into not taking a nap right this minute. I did get some coffee. Woo! Hair in the coffee. But today, when I went to one of my Langdells, it was really, really helpful. I know there's a lot of things they probably tell us to do as new law students because they want you to learn how to do things, and so taking shortcuts, you're not going to learn how to do these things if you're just constantly taking the shortcuts first. But I already started doing something that just because it seemed like it made sense to me, and that was when all these case briefs. I used to do my case briefs. I would type them up. I'll show you what one looks like. I would type them up. I know, that's a case brief. A one-page case brief. Sometimes they've been more. But anyway, basically, I would type up a case brief, and then I would kind of highlight. Obviously, things in your case brief are already supposed to be important, but I would highlight important things. And then during class, when we would go over that case, I would also be able to make notes on that page. So that's kind of how I've been doing case briefs, but I would also highlight in my book. So now I've started doing what we call briefing in like book briefing. So that means as I go through the book, I not only am highlighting these things with my little color-coded system, but I'm making notes in the book so that I'm not really having to even type out those big long pages anymore, that I've got the case sitting in front of me and I literally can flip through the pages and immediately find, like for instance, what I'm looking at right here in front of me is a case, and I have a little color-coded system. I know you guys see all these lovely highlighters. I have this color-coded system, and so any basic facts are in yellow. So when I'm reading through a case, I will highlight the facts of the case in yellow, like the things that help me tell the story. And then a lot of times I'll just take my pen or whatever and write somewhere at the top of it, just like a really quick synopsis, maybe 2 words. Like, I don't know, there was a case that was, this particular one was like the guy, this is a criminal case that I'm looking at. There was a stabbing victim, like a kitchen fight or whatever, a stabbing victim. So I might write, those words, kitchen stabbing victim kind of thing. So anything that would prompt me for what the story is. So when I look down, I don't just see that case title. I know exactly what we're referencing. So then I go through, I highlight anything that's like the basic facts that would help me just remember the case. And then once I spot the issue, what the main issue is, I will highlight that in blue, and then a lot of times just write next to it issue, just to remind me, but I'll know anytime I see blue that that's the issue. Anything that's like procedural, like rules, like if there's a rule that's applying here, I will highlight that in orange. That's just kind of what I established. And so as I'm looking through the case, like rules and like what was the defendant arguing, because a lot of times the defendant is arguing a particular rule applies here and the plaintiff is arguing no, this rule applies, or this is what the rule says, or whatever. So if a professor looks at me and says, Vanessa, what's the rule here? Well, I can look down and see somewhere I've highlighted something in orange. And I may have gone in and written right next to it, and it says, oh, the rule. So this is what we call book briefing. And so instead of writing that down in a notebook, which for me, I do handwritten notes because several of my teachers don't allow computers. So instead of, like, I could write them out like that, where I have the facts, the issue. In this case, this particular one I'm looking at actually had 2 issues that they were considering. The issue, what was the defendant's argument? My professor wants us to know those, so that's kind of how I flow that. The holdings, the court's rationale, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I haven't gotten to that yet. any like peripheral, like any information, not even necessarily dicta if you follow law, it's not even necessarily dicta, but just anything else that I think is important that doesn't fall into some of the main categories. A lot of times I keep this random purple here, and that way I can highlight something purple. But pink is always what the ruling, like whatever the judgment was, or the holding, the holding or the court's rationale, all those things. The judgment, what the court held, which is what the court decided, and then their rationale, because a lot of times they'll make a decision and then they're like, this is why we made this decision. That is pink. So highlighting this, pointing this out in the textbook, that's what we call book briefing instead of case briefing, where you would write it all out by hand. Now, one of the things that I've done, like for instance, this case that I'm looking at right here, let's see, I did book brief this case. Yeah, I've book briefed that case. Yeah, I've book briefed it already. But, and see, I've got more written things here. Even though I've book briefed it, so I could, if a professor asked me these questions, I would be able to do it straight from the book. I do still write some notes down about it. A lot of times I still save a page in my notebook. I would do the same thing on the computer if I was taking notes on the computer. A lot of times I'll just save a page in the notebook about that case so that I can write things down specific about it. And, you know, maybe something in my little notes about it aren't in the book. But anyway, the bottom line is it's week 4. There are so many other things that we have to do, a lot of reading, but now we're starting to get like memos assigned that we have to write, and our outlining, you need to really already be doing your outlining by now. There's just a lot going on, and taking extra time to write out case briefs constantly. The whole exercise of learning how to do a case brief was learning how to spot the facts, the issue, the rules, the holdings, the court's rationale, the judgment, that kind of thing. Learning how to spot those things. So if you're still struggling with spotting and really figuring out what those things are, by all means, continuing to do full case briefs, highly recommended. And actually, if I have time, I will still do those. But as I learned today in one of my lingo's, time will become progressively more and more crucial, like just less available, the studying that you need to do. And the thing about it is see, case briefs aren't graded in any capacity. Like, it's literally for you to actually learn the information and to the bottom line, the case brief is there for you to understand the rule and how the rule is applied in a scenario. Because on the test and in real life, you are going to be given a scenario and you need to know how the rule of law applies to that scenario. You need to know what decisions have been made before, if there's precedent about it, if there's already been a ruling about that kind of thing. You need to know those kinds of things. So that's why I am already doing what we call book briefing, because it's just a better use of time. So there you go. Those of you who wanted to know, now you know. Definitely wouldn't say don't ever case brief. I'm just saying that once you kind of get a hang of it, book briefing can be helpful. Just know what the professor wants in each class, because certain professors want different information for their courses. My torts professor has told us exactly what he wants, like what kind of information he asks about. So when I'm briefing for a torts case, I make sure I include just a little bit different information than what I do for my criminal class. And for sure, very different than, when we're briefing cases for civil procedure, you're looking at what did this, most of those are like Supreme Court cases. And so you're looking, going, okay, what did this justice, what was the majority, what was their opinion, and then what was the other set of justices, what was their opinion, was there a dissenting opinion, and you need to know what those opinions were and that kind of thing. So yeah, case briefing for civil procedure is a little bit different, so can totally be done still though in your book. There you go. There's some case briefing versus book briefing for you today.